So stand by, make sure you have a glass of water handy, and we'll get started here in just 1 minute. Thank you. We're waiting on about 10 more people to log on, so let's give them a chance to do that. All righty, welcome and let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Sandra Firpo and I'm an emergency services specialist for the San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department. So a little over a year and a half ago, the fire departments from 3 cities, Belmont, Foster City, and San Mateo, joined together becoming one agency. And so now we are known as San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department, serving the residents of Belmont, Foster City, and San Mateo. So if you see a firefighter or a truck with a different city name on it, that's normal because now all the equipment is being shared, all the training is being shared. It's a really terrific event. It's taken quite a lot of work to do, but that's why if you see a truck from San Mateo and you live in Foster City, that's what's happening. So welcome aboard. A few quick housekeeping items while we're here. This webinar is being recorded, so please know that. We ask that you keep your microphone on mute, and if and when you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. The Emergency Services Manager, my colleague and boss, Janelle Masterson, is our facilitator this evening. Thank you, Janelle, and she'll be keeping an eye out for your questions in the Q&A box, and she'll let me know. There we go. Yes, feel free to take notes. There's a lot of information, and we'll try and follow up with a few things in a future email with some of the notes that if you had been attending this class prior to the COVID-19 outbreak, this is the first time we're doing it virtually, we would be giving you a folder with some papers and some handy forms for you to take home. We can't do that here, but we can certainly get it to you later as far as where to find it on our website, and we'll be following up with an email to all of you who registered for this class. So thank you for that. So here is at the bottom of your screen, you'll find some different icons that are the controls for Zoom. You want this box, the Q&A box, over to the right, and that's where we'll be looking for your questions as we go through the class. So please feel free to use that. But the first thing, now that you've met me briefly, that we want to do is get to know you a little bit. So this is an interactive part of the class. We'll be putting up a poll, and we want to know what you've done so far as preparedness. September happens to be National Preparedness Month, so congratulations, you've already done something. You're taking this class. But there's a lovely poll there. If you use your mouse and find the one that really speaks to you, that would be fantastic. And go ahead and click on those. Take your time. You have to read through them. There's another moment to let everybody make their selection. Okay, so let's take a look at the results here. So talked about what to do in case of an emergency or natural disaster. About 55% of you say you've done that. Congratulations, that's terrific. Prepared an emergency or a family emergency plan. You know, it feels like homework, I know, and it takes a little doing. But when you get through today, you'll find how it works, and that may be something that you want to consider doing for your family as we move forward. Attended a course with emergency preparedness, such as the Get Ready class. Thank you. That's about 55% of you, but all of you, that should be 100%, should get that credit. Made an emergency kit and assembled emergency supplies. 45% of you. That's fantastic. You're ahead of most of your neighbors. Purchased hazard insurance, such as flood or earthquake. None of you have done that. It's something to certainly seriously consider, and we'll talk a little bit as to why that is as we go through here. But it's something that you would talk with your insurance provider on. Homeowners insurance does not automatically cover you for things like flood damage or earthquake damage. It's something you should talk to your insurance provider about what your options might be. Identified and understand utility shutoffs, 55% of you, fantastic. Anchored service utilities to your home, such as your water heater and furnace, were about 27%, and strengthened your home with retrofits. Again, expensive, big project, but certainly something to consider after you've done other items. So thank you so much for participating in that. We do appreciate it. So here we live in a really beautiful area, especially now that the smoke seems to have moved away, at least for a while. And we do appreciate the beauty and tranquility of where we live. But we know that that can change very quickly. Planning does not mean giving up. It's quite the opposite. So taking action and doing things is really empowering, and I hope we can help you with that as we move forward in this class. So what are some of the natural disasters and things that we face here? Well, usually if we were in a class, you'd all be yelling out different things. And the number one thing that people tend to yell out is earthquake. Sure, we live in California, we're an earthquake country. This PowerPoint presentation was created a little over a year ago. So when you look at these different disasters that we might face, what's missing? A certain pandemic, a certain virus, right? So these are all things that can happen. We're not immune to different types of disasters. And that's a little bit about the price we pay for living in such a beautiful area. Even tornadoes. We don't have to worry about hurricanes so much, because that's not our area. But even tornadoes, this was in South San Francisco in March of 2005. I remember this one quite well, but fortunately, nobody was hurt. But even tornadoes can happen. I'm not telling you this so that you'll be terrified and hide under your bed, quite the opposite. We'll be able to walk through and move forward and take action, which is really empowering. Again, this PowerPoint presentation was done before. I'm going to unfortunately have to update it with some of the more current fires, but we know now that wildfires certainly can happen in our area, regardless of where you live. This map was just very interesting because this here on the left side is the campfire a day after it started. And if you put it over our map here of the peninsula, that's how fast it was and how big of an area it was covering in just a day since it started. We know this area, the Santa Rosa area known as Coffee Park, and how devastated it was. So again, even if we're living in a city, we can be victimized by a fast-moving fire. Now let's move on to earthquakes, our favorite topic. We talked about the big one. And Loma Prieta, for those of us who remember Loma Prieta in 1989, was not the big one. If we look here on the left side, this is a model of what they imagine would have been like in 1906, the Great Quake of 1906 in our area, had we had modeling and this was populated, which it wasn't at the time. This was, on the right side, the actual shaking and magnitude that was felt in 1989, Loma Prieta. So even the 06 earthquake was considerably bigger than Loma Prieta was. I'm going to see if this is actually going to work for us here. I want you to see something and observe this carefully, and you'll have to tell me through osmosis what really stands out to you in this video. Audio is not important, just the video is important. So what really stood out to you there? The shaking, right? It was pretty dramatic. But the speed at which the kids got under their desks. And why did that happen? That's because they practiced. And you have an opportunity to do that, but it's important to actually have some muscle memory. Those kids got under that desk, nobody had to tell them what to do. They ducked, covered, and held on. Because with all that shaking, anything that's over you, such as a table, is going to move. So let's try not to forget that. But I wanted to take advantage of reminding you that the Great Shakeout, an event that happens every year, is coming up on October 15th. And you can sign up your family or make a team and register, and it makes it more fun, more interactive. You also will receive more information. So please when you have a chance, check out shakeout.org/California, and you'll get a lot of great information about the Shakeout, what it's about, and maybe even get some more information that you didn't have before. All right. So I told you a little bit about the consolidation, the fact that we are now San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department. We are made up of 9 fire departments, fire stations, I should say, that are strategically located to be able to answer, on average, any 911 call in about 4 minutes, which is a really terrific response time, any place in our area. We also have a terrific mutual aid agreement with our neighboring cities. So if we have several calls in one area and we need some assistance in that area, there's always a backup of another city to take over if we're busy doing an assistance in at one call, all right? But it also means, since we have 9 fire stations, that means that we have about 40 professional responders on duty on any given shift. Terrific, we do really well. But that also means that if it's a big thing, like an earthquake, which is regional, all of our neighboring cities will also be experiencing the same types of calls and issues and the big problems, gas mains, fires, collapsed buildings, whatever the case may be. So they have to concentrate on that. So as citizens ourselves, we have a certain responsibility too. So there are things that we can do to step forward and reduce our chances of damage, our chances of needing extra help, and therefore giving our first responders the leeway they need to be able to take care of the big problems. This is, again, when the big things hit, when they are regional in nature. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the things in our home. Our home is our safe space. We know our home, we feel comfortable in our home. It's our castle. But even in our castle, there are things that can be risky and dangerous. So being aware of them and possibly taking steps to mitigate or lessen that risk is important. Gas lines, falling books, things that can come down. If you have anything heavy around your bed, you may want to change where you have things located, and protect yourself as much as possible in advance from things that may happen. One of the biggies is wiring, and we'll talk a little bit about overloaded plugs and frayed electric cords, because we're obviously seeing a lot of wildfire in the news right now, but home fires still happen, and we want to try and avoid those as much as possible. So what do we do before an earthquake? That's now. Before an earthquake, make sure you're storing heavy things away, especially from around your bed. So if you have a nice, beautiful bookshelf, that can come down. We want to make sure it's secured against the wall. Move things away from windows, broken glass. If you think about it, if an earthquake hits in the middle of the night, what is the top injury people tend to get if an earthquake happens at night? Injuries on cut feet, because people jump out of bed to go check on the kids or check on the house, and a vase may have fallen, glass, a picture frame, glass is on the floor, and you cut your foot when you're running around checking on things. So having a pair of shoes and a flashlight by your bed is a great way of avoiding that problem. This lady went to the extra step of putting it in a bag and tying it to the leg of her bed, because she's got hardwood floors, and we saw how much movement there can be in an earthquake. So she figured things would be moving around a lot. She knows exactly where she's going to find her shoes after an earthquake. So an extra step, it gives you more options, makes you safer, and therefore you can help other people if you're okay. If you're injured, it makes it harder to help the rest of your family. This is not somebody who forgot a piece of gum and put it underneath a dish. This is earthquake putty, or museum putty as they call it, used in museums to secure priceless items to the shelving. You can even use it on your picture frames. If you put it on the bottom corners against the wall, it keeps them from flapping during an earthquake. So anything, again, you can do to minimize potential damage is a great thing. We've probably all heard this, right? During an earthquake, what do? Drop, cover, and hold on. We saw how much movement an earthquake can cause. That table that you're getting under is going to walk away if you don't hold on to the leg of that table or chair or whatever you're underneath. If you can't get underneath something, it's very crucial to protect your core and the head and neck, right? So you want to crouch down and cover your head and neck and your core. That's what you're trying to do in an earthquake. The old adage about getting in a doorway, please don't do that. You're going to get your fingers caught in the jam. You're going to get flying debris hitting you. Underneath, crouch, protect your core. After an earthquake, things can be quite messy. So again, your safety first. You can't help others if you're injured. So good pair of shoes, gloves, work gloves if you've got them, before you start touching or moving and inspecting things. But you do want to inspect the inside of your home and the outside of your home after an event such as an earthquake. All right. Some of the other things here, tune into emergency alert systems. If you haven't heard of it, it's called SMC Alert. It's the messaging alert system for our county here in San Mateo County. And every county has one. So if, for example, I live in San Mateo County, but at another time I worked in San Francisco. So I also had on my phone the San Francisco alert system as well as San Mateo's. If you have children who are in school, in college or someplace in a different county, you want to make sure you get the alert system for that county. And if they're in college, usually most college campuses will have an alert system of their own. No reason why you can't sign up for that alert system so you know what's going on there as well if anything were to come up. All right. What to do after the big something big happens, right? It's tempting. Jump in the car and drive around and see how everything else is. You're putting yourself in more danger, and you're taking up road space for people who either have to evacuate or professional responders who are trying to get in to solve problems. So please keep the roadways clear. Turn on your radio. Make sure you're getting information. SMC Alert is another way that you would be getting information. You want to have as many sources of quality information as you can. Again, give yourself that flexibility. We want to notify our family about how we're doing, because what's the big worry as soon as something happens? After the shaking stops, the first thing we're concerned about is how our loved ones are. So if you can get word, and we'll talk about communications in a bit, if you can get word to them, you've lowered that temperature a little bit. You've lowered the anxiety, and that helps us be much more productive in terms of focusing on what needs to get done if we know what we actually need to worry about. I talked a little bit about walking around your home. please do that. And make sure that any items that have fallen get cleaned up. Make sure that things that may fall, may have gotten jiggled loose or something, potentials for other hazards. Those are all things that you want to check out. And hazmat or hazardous materials. What hazardous materials, Sandra? Well, we have bleach and cleaning supplies in our homes, right? If you have any automotive liquids and that sort of thing, gasoline, all that is hazardous. All that can spill, all that can cause problems. So again, a good walk around never hurts, all right? If it's nighttime in particular and you're using a flashlight, please, use a flashlight and not, a candle or something to see with. You don't know if there's a gas leak or something like that. So your safety after the earthquake or after the event is crucial. Again, you can't help anyone if you yourself are hurt. Now, we're all going through a disaster right now. That's what makes this class a little unique than the classes I've had in the past. Usually, maybe one or two people in the class might have experienced a disaster personally, whether they've been through a hurricane or an earthquake, a house fire. But right now, this pandemic is global. And I always talk about how disasters tend to affect us in three ways. So think about this in terms of the pandemic. It affects us physically. So if your house gets damaged or if you get injured or sick, that's physical. It affects us emotionally, right? You're feeling that, it's been going on for a long time. You're going to get a little blue. You're going to get down. You're going to feel helpless. You're going to feel frustrated. That's emotional and that's normal. And then of course it's going to affect us financially. People are out of work or the normal course of events are not happening. So those three things are standard in any disaster. And now all of us are experiencing that. So this pandemic is a disaster. That doesn't mean that other things don't stop while we're having a pandemic. We see the wildfires, we've seen hurricanes. Oh my goodness, do we just give up? No, that's why you're here, okay? Because there's actions you can take, things you can do to help protect yourself and your family. And you, in that way, help our professional responders be much more effective if we have to deal with another disaster within the disaster. All right. So let's talk a little bit about 911 and calling our professional responders, okay? 911, fantastic service. It works across the country. Most of us now are on cell phones. When you call 911 from a cell phone, as opposed to the old landlines that most of us used to have, if you call from a landline, your location of the call will automatically come up on the 911 dispatcher's computer. But if you're calling from a cell phone, it doesn't necessarily happen that way. And it may not be the dispatcher closest to your location that answers. Don't worry about all the questions they're asking you. Answer all the questions because I'll explain that in a minute. But in terms of reaching the dispatcher, the first thing you need to tell them is the nature of the emergency. Hi, I see smoke and flames coming from the house at 123 Main Street. In what city? Please tell them the city, because then if they are in a different location, they can forward that information to the correct city and start getting the resources that you need to you, all right? So city and type of emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire or a criminal call, whichever it may be, they know who to send and they start that process going. So as soon as you call 911, the dispatcher is going to start asking you a lot of questions and you're going to go, just send somebody. Yes, the somebody is on the way. As soon as you hit 911, they're already typing in and sending information. But the information they are gathering from you will go directly to those first responders so they know what they need to be ready for. Again, that will save time. If they're going to a medical call and they're saying, oh, okay, the person was hit in the head by a collapsing brick, then they know, well, maybe there was a collapsing wall. or if the person was overcome by fumes and passed out, well, they know they may need to wear some sort of respiratory protection. And they can get all that, gather all that, and have it ready to go as soon as the engine or truck arrives to the location. So answer all the questions, know that help is on the way automatically. But I'm giving you a tip, and that's the reason you're taking this class, for some tips, right? These phone numbers that are here on the screen are the direct non-emergency dispatch lines for these cities. If you know for certain that you are in Belmont and that's where the emergency is happening, if you call that number, then you will get the dispatcher in Belmont. It'll save a few seconds, but you need to have those numbers in your phone, and you need to be sure you know which city you're in. 911, don't ever hesitate, call it, but be sure you tell them the nature of the emergency and the city that you're in. Okay, more things that we can do to help ourselves. We want to talk a little bit about fire extinguishers. I happen to have one. All right. So the brand is not important, but the type is. Most homes, these have become very, very accessible. You can get them online. They're sold at Costco. And so the price has gone down there. So they're much more accessible for the average people to have in their homes, even in their cars. And the average type of fire extinguisher that covers most types of home fires is called an A, B, C fire extinguisher. Types A, B, and C. There's a lot of different types of fire extinguishers for a lot of different types of fires. But the ABC fire extinguisher is the go-to for most homes, and that's what you want to look for. Learning to use it is important. There's a lot of YouTube videos on how to use a fire extinguisher, but you also may want to consider taking the CERT course, because one of the things we get to do is practice certain hands-on activities, and one of them is putting out a fire using a fire extinguisher. All right. Having smoke detectors. I meant to bring a smoke detector with me, but you know what they look like, right? They're only good if you actually leave the battery in them and let them do their work. So taking them out only gives you a piece of plastic on the wall. So please, fire extinguishers. And if you look for the newer ones, they are now called 10-year fire smoke detectors. And you install them and you don't have to replace the batteries ever. Just test them once a month and you're good to go. So again, they've become much more accessible, much more budget friendly, and they are a life-saving tool. So why not have them in your home and where you need them? All right. Fire evacuation plans and practicing your plan. Remember how quickly those kids got under the table? That's because they practiced. Same with your family, right? You want to have 2 ways, not just out of your home, but 2 ways out of every room. So think about your bedroom, think about your kitchen, your living room, 2 ways out of every room. So the doorway is the normal way, right? What's the second way? Possibly a window. So especially with your children, you want to talk about what an emergency is and how sometimes going through the door is not the best way. Let's go ahead and use the window. What happens though, if you, let's say you have a 2-story home and the kids go out the window to the backyard and you go out the front door and the aunt goes out the side door and everybody's in a different spot. Fire is happening, the fire engines are coming, it's loud, there's a lot of noise, there's some confusion. How do you know everybody got out? Because once you get out of a burning building of any type, you do not go back in. Don't do it. It's very tempting, but don't do it. How do we assure ourselves that everyone got out or that there is actually somebody left inside? Have a meeting place. Have it planned. Practice meeting there. You're in the backyard. Okay, meeting place. Everybody get to the meeting place. The tree across the street. Don't make it a car because cars move. But something that is stationary that they can find, so everybody will gather there. You can do a quick head count and you know that everybody's gotten out. All right. Then when the first responders arrive, you can either say A, yes, everyone is out, or B, no, we think Johnny is still inside and the last place we saw him was in the upstairs bedroom. That way the first responders can focus and get in there as quickly as they can to rescue someone who may be stuck. All right. Okay, so developing a family emergency plan. I talked about 2 ways out of every room and 2 ways out of your house, of course. But think about 2 ways out of your neighborhood. We've been hearing about the wildfires and evacuation calls and orders for certain areas. What if on your way out of the neighborhood, a tree or telephone pole came down, or in the earthquake, the whole street has totally gone, caterwaddle. So you can't use that road now. You need a secondary. So having a secondary way out of your neighborhood is important. Again, a family meetup. So you have a family meetup if you have to evacuate your house. You should also have one if you have to evacuate your neighborhood. In my case, back in 1989, after the Loma Prieta earthquake, prior to that, we had already agreed that my house was the family meeting place. So in the hours after the earthquake, people all were gathering at my house. Fortunately, my house was not damaged, and we were able to take everybody in. So that worked out well. Have a plan for pets. If your cat or dog is not accustomed to being carried around in a carrier, they're not going to be agreeable to doing that in an emergency. So make the carrier part of their daily routine, maybe feed them in it so they get to know it. It's one of those things that they actually get accustomed to prior to any problem. If you have family with mobility issues, it's going to take longer to do things. So keep that in mind as far as your plan. If you have to evacuate and you have young children or family members with mobility issues, it will take longer. Start earlier. Keep in mind that the status of your family may change. Every winter after the winter break, we always have some kids on crutches because they were skiing and they broke an ankle or a leg, right? Or they're in a wheelchair. So now that has changed the dynamic of your home. If somebody has had surgery, right? Their mobility is now limited. They're recovering, but of course they're not yet recovered at the time of whatever emergency may happen. So if you have to evacuate and you have somebody with mobility issues, that's who's had surgery or who had a broken limb, that's a change in the dynamic of your family, and that's a change in how you're going to plan to get out. All right. I want to talk a little bit about the out-of-state contact concept. If there's one thing that you can do even tonight, is to develop an out-of-state contact. When something big happens, such as an earthquake, what's the first thing we all do? Right? We're all jumping on one of these things, right? Calling everybody up to see how they're doing. Remember how I talked about that's the first thing you're worried about. That's the big issue. How are your loved ones? Okay. Since everybody in this area is going to be on the phone, and there's the possibility that cell towers came down in the earthquake or got burned up in the wildfire, right? So the bandwidth is going to suck down to nothing. And phone calls, voice calls, may not get through as easily or even at all in an emergency. Very frustrating, very scary. But how do we get word out? How do we get information? So keeping in mind that in a disaster, everything takes longer. So you're going to have to keep that in mind. There are ways to still at least let your loved ones know your status. So why not take your outgoing voice message and change it? Say, hey, this is Sandra. We just had an earthquake. I'm fine. I'm going over to mom's. Right? So if somebody tries to call me, they can't get through, they'll get my voicemail. They know, A, I'm okay, and what my plan is, right? So do that. You can also change the status on your social media. If you're on, Twitter or Facebook or something, you can change your status to, dating, from dating to safe, safe, going to Joe's, or something along those lines. Again, people might check all these different ways of reaching you. Something they'll get through and be able to get at least the information to lower the temperature, calm them down, allow them to focus on the issues that are happening as opposed to just worrying about, oh my God, how are you doing? All right, so they can get things done. Out of state or out of area contacts, long distance, those calls have a better chance of getting through it. So if you have, in my case, I have a brother in Phoenix, Arizona. My entire family knows after a big event, if we can't get through on the phone to each other, call my brother and let him know how you are. Then every person who checks in with him will get a report back. I've heard from so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and this is where they are and this is how they're doing, okay? Again, it's not the same satisfaction as direct contact with someone, but huge in terms of being able to sort of calm down and focus your energy where it's really needed. So the only way an out-of-state contact works is if everyone knows who that person is, and that the out-of-state contact person, please let them know that that's their role in an emergency. Somebody that you know will actually answer the phone. All right. So a family emergency plan is a written document, so it's a little bit of homework, but it's certainly very helpful when it comes to an emergency. You don't have to think. Everybody knows what to do. All right. This is sort of the escape route planning that we talked about, 2 ways out of every room, 2 ways out of the house, even 2 ways out of your neighborhood. So you can find a lot of these types of maps pre-done, but you know, any grid paper will do. Draw a quick basic floor plan of your home and show the kids which way you're going, where the meeting place would be. In this case, it's a tree in front of the house, and you know, voila, you've got your escape plan and everybody knows what to do about it. All right. Communications, we just discussed a little bit about that. Cell towers, lines will be overloaded. All right, so have some flexibility, have some options. And the out of state or out of area contact, really crucial. And I think a huge load off your mind in being able to reach someone and being able to have that give and take in terms of information after an earthquake. All right. Again, this is an old slideshow, so payphones may not necessarily be the way, but carrying change and cash is actually a good part of your emergency plan, which we will discuss a little bit later on. If you have to evacuate your home, we talked a little bit about that. Keep in mind that, you know, 2 ways out of your neighborhood. Keep in mind that you may end up not being able to use your car. Many stories of people evacuating the campfire and other wildfires where it got to a point where their car was actually catching fire and they had to abandon the car. So be prepared for that possibility and you know, give yourselves as much flexibility and many options as possible. And again, practicing escape drills, practicing evacuation drills, even in an office setting. I know it seems like a pain and oh gosh, I'm in the middle of this report, but you saw how it pays off in the situation, the video that I showed you with the classroom. It does pay off. People remember, they know what to do. It makes it that much faster. It saves lives because it saves time, right? Talks about focus on children. And I don't like necessarily just focus on children because we all need that assistance, if you will, after a big event happens. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of worry, okay? Let's try to bring that down with good information and with helping each other, all right? We'll talk a little bit about go bags, literally grab and go if you had to leave right now. When you're putting together a go bag or an emergency kit of any type, you want to customize it. You want things in there that matter to you. During this National Preparedness Month, if you go online or if you go to any hardware store or Lowe's or something like that, they'll have these terrific kits, backpacks for sale. They are fantastic, but a lot of people will buy that backpack and shove it into a closet and go, I'm ready. No. Take that backpack, open everything up, make sure you're familiar with everything that's in there. In an emergency, you don't want to be cutting open or trying to open packaging. You want everything to be ready to go. But also there's things that are specific to you, things that make you comfortable, things that you like, and things that you need that aren't necessarily going to be in a pre-bought kit. So take that kit, which is terrific, it's a great start, but customize it to you. I wear prescription eyeglasses. So whenever I replace my eyeglasses and get new ones, I'll take my old pair, I'll put them in the case, and I'll put that in my go bag, all right? I love wet wipes. This is prior to COVID-19. I still love wet wipes. I always like to have them. I have a pack of wet wipes in my go bag. Whatever, if you have children, you may want to have some toys or a cuddly deck of cards, a favorite book, a magazine, whatever makes you happy, put some of that in there, okay? So customize your kits. All right. So I want to take a chance here, opportunity, I should say, to ask you one more question. So let's do another poll, shall we? This is interactive, so let's get started. We want to talk about or ask of you the hazards in your community that concern you the most. What is it that keeps you up at night? All right. So if you take a moment to take a read through some of these and tell me what are the ones that worry you the most. Okay, earthquake number one. I'm not surprised, 93% of you. Dam and levee failure. We live in Foster City and San Mateo areas, sure, and sea level rise is certainly a concern. Drought. We live in California. Flood, 7%. Would you believe that flooding is the #1 disaster nationwide? That happens no matter where you live. Flooding, #1 disaster. Nobody's worried about hazardous materials, okay, or landslides. Sea level rise, certainly, 21%. Wildfire, 57%. So thank you for participating in that. That does help us a lot. And the nice thing about preparedness, if you will, is that it's not like just for earthquakes or just for wildfires. Preparedness is in general, whatever emergency. I'll talk a little bit about CERT later, but I had one of my CERT members recently said that they were working from home, of course, and suddenly their internet went out. They walked outside and they found PG&E lineman was doing some repairs, and he apologized. He goes, "I'll put that back," and he put it back. She went back inside. She went back out to let him know that the internet had returned and saw him sort of limping. And he had come on off his ladder, and somehow the ladder had kicked up and hit him and scraped up his shins pretty badly. So she went in and got her medical kit and came out and was able to, safely with gloves and everything, was able to give him some relief and bandage his wounds so that his pants weren't rubbing on it, and it made a huge difference. So she was able to respond quickly and help somebody out because she was prepared and had the confidence in having her materials handy. So again, a little work in advance can pay off big time in an emergency, no matter how big or small. All right. So we're going to give everybody a chance to stretch and take a break, run to the little girl's room or little boy's room, and get yourself a little water. Make sure we stay hydrated. So let's take a 3-minute break. I'm setting my timer right now, and we'll keep ourselves nice and honest. Ready? 3-minute break. Everybody enjoy, and I'll be seeing you in 3, starting now. And we're back. The alarm is off. Stop the alarm. There we go. Hi, everybody. You're back. Everybody's got some water. I was able to wet my whistle because I'm going to be keeping to talking here, and it's a lot to talk about. All right. So let's talk a little bit about natural gas. All right. We talked a little about walking around your home, checking for different things. If you do that now, we should all be more familiar with the area around our homes. We want to locate the utilities, and one of those is natural gas. They sell, hold on, I'm reaching over here. They sell different tools that you can use as gas shutoff tools. This one runs about $4 at a local hardware store or online. This one runs about $7 or $8. It has a little bit more flexibility, but they both work really, really well. And we're going to show you what a gas main looks like, what you're looking for, and how to shut it off. We'll talk about the when, which is super important, right after that. Now, in order to show you this, we have to move the camera. And I don't want anybody getting motion sickness. So give us a second to let us move the camera. So if you want to look away or close your eyes for a second, now would be a good time to do that. And then we'll show you the gas main. Put it down, face it. No, just put it on the floor. Perfect. And take the camera with you. Yay! Hang in there, folks. We're almost with you. So what you're looking at right now is what a gas main might look like, this part. So this part in my house, for example, is in the garage, while the valve that we're going to look at next is actually outside of the house. So the setup is going to be slightly different, but you're looking for this. This is your main. And then this side, if you bring the camera over here, you'll see this little valve, which is probably not painted red in your house, but it is, if you look at it, in line with the pipe, which would be the one going into the ground. So this valve is in line with the pipe going into the ground, all right? If it's in line with the pipe, that means the gas is on and it's flowing. If you have to turn off your gas, you would take your tool and you would turn it a quarter turn. And it's not easy. This takes some effort. All right? Quarter turn. And now it is across the pipe. So think of it as blocking the gas. That indicates that it's off. All right? You will never, ever turn it back on. Once you turn off the gas, leave it off. And we'll talk about that next. I wanted to show you this firsthand. Now we're going to put the camera back. Close your eyes again. Excuse me. Makeup. Thank you to Casey. And yes, it's straight and it's perfect. All right, thank you all for that. So again, the two tools, they're called gas shutoff tools. Notice that they come in two sizes here, and this also gives you flexibility here because the valves, surprisingly, are not consistent from home to home, even in the same area. So this gives you, again, more flexibility on how to, what is going to work to turn it off. All right, so under what circumstances would we shut off the gas? After an earthquake. There's a famous story of after an earthquake. It was during the day, most people were at work, and a good neighbor realized everybody's gone out to work and it's going to take them a while to get back home. So I have a shutoff tool. I'm going to go down the block and shut off everyone's gas. Well, it turned out that it wasn't necessary because there were no gas leaks in most of those homes. So now nobody had gas, and it took about a week before PG&E had time to get to everyone's homes to turn the gas back on. Turning the gas back on is not an option for us as civilians. It has to be done by somebody, either the fire department or the utility company. That's it. And if it's a big emergency and it's a regional issue, it may take a week for them to be able to have time to assign somebody to your home. So you turn off the gas only when it's necessary. When is it necessary? All right. You have a fantastic mechanism, I should say, to detect gas leaks. Number one way to detect one, your nose. All right, if you smell it. If you smell it, does it mean I have a gas leak? No. It means you need to investigate. All right, if you smell it, see it, or hear it. Short, real story happened to me. So now a month ago, we had the lightning storm. But years ago, again, when it was very rare to have lightning in our area, we had another smaller lightning storm. And I'm at home with my family, and suddenly the whole house shakes and lit up like a Christmas tree, and was like, was that a direct hit? It really felt like one. And again, I started doing outside look at the home, and my husband was doing the inside look at the home when he hollers out to me to come into the garage. In the garage, not far from the main, I could hear a hiss. Suddenly, as I walk closer, obviously I'm overcome almost by the smell of gas, and I could see it escaping a hole that was a good sized hole. Obviously the lightning had struck nearby and come up and through the pipe, blowing a small hole to cause a significant gas leak in our home. So immediately opened doors to ventilate. We evacuated my kids and called 911, who came immediately and turned off things. And we were fortunate because since it was just one localized event, PG&E was able to come out, ensure that everything was safe, and we were able to get the gas back on the next morning. So again, think about it, use your information, investigate if it's actually happening, and then, yes, turn off the gas if you have a gas leak. And then don't turn it on again. Notify PG&E that you've turned off your gas and why. And so if it's a localized situation like mine was, they'll send somebody out right away. If it's regional, it may take longer. All right? Okay. Let's talk about PSPS. When this slide deck was made, no one knew what a PSPS was. Now more of us are familiar with it. Public Safety Power Shutoff. After the terrible wildfires that we had in 2017 and 2018, all the utility companies in California decided we better start learning from mistakes, and we know that our equipment gets hot, sparks can get started, and in dry areas that can cause wildfires. So let's mitigate some of that by when weather conditions are in a perfect storm, if you will, of very dry fuel, high winds, and low humidity, they'll call for a PSPS and turn off equipment, therefore turning off your electricity for a period of time. How long will my electricity be out? Depends on the storm. If the windstorm lasts 2 days, then it'll be off for that 2 days, plus however long it takes PG&E in our area to check all the lines, make sure they weren't damaged, make any repairs that are necessary, and then turn it back on, all right? Whether or not you agree with this plan is not the issue. The issue is this plan exists, and we have to be ready for the potential of a power outage, okay? So what does that mean? Well, what if I have medical equipment and I need medical equipment that runs on electricity? They can't turn off my electricity, can they? Yes, they can. If you're a hospital, yes, they can. So hospitals have backup generators, and you and I should have a backup plan. If you choose to go with a generator, please make sure you talk with a professional about that. But if you, in other smaller levels, and most of us can make sure we have backup power for our cell phones, for example, which are important. If we do use a medical device, we want to have a battery backup for each of those medical devices. We want to be able to, if we know that it's going to be a PSPS, the nice thing about those is that they alert us a couple of days and 24 hours in advance. So we can make arrangements maybe with a family member or a friend who lives out of our immediate area to go there to charge up any devices we may need. So again, a plan and having more flexibility and options is the key. There's a website here, prepareforpowerdown.com, which also gives you a lot of information as to how they work. Again, power outages happen. They can happen suddenly. We could go out now for whatever reason, an accident, a storm. So the only advantage with a PSPS is that you get some warning. So keep in mind that though the power may be out for several days, and you want to plan for that. So what are some of the things that happen during a power shutdown or a power outage, right? We want a refrigerator. A lot of people talked about how much food they lost. First of all, don't be opening and closing the refrigerator door, because that lowers the temperature of your fridge and therefore damages your food all that much more quickly. Hopefully most outages, if it's a car into a pole or something, they'll get it back up and running in about a couple of hours. But again, a PSPS can be a long time. Turn off and unplug the appliances and computers you're not using. It protects them as well, because when the power comes back and we don't want it coming back in a surge, protect your equipment. Please use flashlights and not candles. And this is the biggie: know how to manually open your garage door. A lot of us have electric garage door openers and they're fantastic, but they're not going to work if the power is out. So your car won't do you any good if you have to go somewhere and your car is stuck in the garage and you can't open the door. These electric garage door openers have a manual override. All of them are different. Learn how to use it, learn how to do it. If you discover that your door is too heavy for you to open on your own, make an arrangement or talk to your neighbors and develop a little network of people work together and help each other out in a situation like that, all right? Again, pre-planning, more flexibility, all right? If you like to go camping and if you have camping equipment, you've got half of your emergency kit already done. Camping equipment is terrific. And in a power outage, certainly very handy. But keep in mind, camping stoves, barbecues, generators, all those things are meant to be used outside where there's lots of ventilation and not underneath an open window or anything like that. You don't want any of that carbon dioxide coming inside. So please, please be safe, right? This is one of my favorite things because we really have to think about this. What runs on electricity? So there's a power outage, our whole area is out. Traffic lights. Again, another reason not to go driving around because all the traffic lights, you're not cash. Your grocery store is not going to be able to do checkouts. Gas pumps are not going to work. So all these are things that run on electricity that we take for granted. A little planning, we'll be fine. So the ATMs, and I talked a little bit about cash, right? If you're in an emergency, and this again may last for a few days, having cash on hand or accessible is important because again, it gives you more flexibility. If the power is down, the credit card scanners aren't going to work, and neither the ATMs to give you cash. So if you already have cash on hand, you're ahead of the game. But you also want to make sure that that cash is in small bills. Let me give you an example. Let's say we're a few days into a power outage or after an earthquake, or whether it be a PSPS or something like that, and you want to buy some water for your family. You've had some water, but now you are running low and you want to buy some water. I've got a few extra gallons of water. And I'm going to be really nice, and I'm going to sell you this bottle of water for, let's say, $2. All right? Great, $2. Terrific. All you have is a 20. I'm not giving you my change. It's an emergency, and I don't know when that's going to happen again. So now you've just paid $20 for a $2 bottle of water. Again, flexibility and options. And that's why you want to carry small bills or have access to small bills. All right. More tools, more flexibility, smoke detectors and carbon monoxide. You want to make sure you have them. Those 10-year ones that I talked about, great option. All right. Again, more options, more information, more time for your family to escape because you get the warning in advance. All right. So family and community resources. We talked about talking with your neighbors. We just don't talk to our neighbors the way my parents did and my grandparents did. It's just not something we do. We're much more into social media. Even now we're doing a lot of things virtually. So that contact with people is a lot more difficult. But this is the time to do that, right? Start making contact, talk to your neighbors, know who everybody is, not just because you're nosy, but because it's just good for each other. If I know that I have a neighbor who just had surgery, I know that that person's going to need a little bit more assistance in an emergency, or that someone's not strong enough to open their garage door in a power outage. So I know to sort of be aware of that and can help out. The CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, is a wonderful asset and certainly something that is available to you. CERT is made up of residents just like you who take a training of about 8 weeks and learn a lot of different items in terms of emergency preparedness, personally for themselves, their families, and their neighbors, fire suppression, search and rescue, and how to work together as a team. So CERT training is something that is available to you. It is free here in our jurisdiction of Belmont, Foster City, and San Mateo. We've just started what we're calling a hybrid CERT course because we have to do a lot of it now online. But there is a hands-on aspect to it that we will be doing later on when it's safer to do so. All right. So let's talk a little bit about sheltering. We've become familiar with the term shelter in place. In where you are at home, because something outside is of a risk, is a hazard. Smoke. When we had the 2 weeks of the campfire. If there's a dangerous person lurking and the police are looking for them, they may call for a shelter in place, allows you to close and lock your windows and doors. Again, your home is your safe place, right? But then there's also the possibility that you have to evacuate. And if you don't have family or someplace else to go, a lot of people may go to a shelter if they set one up. Again, how do you know about this? This is all part of the communications, right? So your SMC alert, for example, may tell you where shelters are located. But going to a shelter may mean being in a place that is unfamiliar with a lot of people that you're not familiar with. And so you want to make sure you have your go bag, your supplies, something that is comfortable to you, your medications. If you have a dietary need of some sort, please consider putting that in your go bag, a few bars of something, because after a big event happens and they're setting up evacuation centers and shelters, they're not going to have a huge menu and options of food. So if you have someone in your family who has allergies or other dietary restrictions, make sure that you have a few types of bars in your kit that will tide them over until there are more options of food. We've become more familiar, obviously, with evacuation orders because of the wildfires. So again, evacuation orders may come with some notice. They may come with hardly any notice. You have to be able to go in 5 minutes. So please give yourself some flexibility, some options. And a go bag, for example, for each person in your home is one of those options. All right. So when do you go to a shelter? Well, if it's not an evacuation, such as for a wildfire, it's maybe after an earthquake. Like we said, walk around your home and see if your home is secure. Make sure there's no gas leaks. Make sure the home is still on the foundations. There are no major cracks. Did a tree fall and break the roof, maybe just on one part of the house. Look to see if the house or your living area is still viable. And if it is, you're probably going to be much more comfortable in your own home than to go to a shelter or a neighbor's house or a family member's, right? You know where everything is. It may not be perfect. Power may be out, but it's your home and you know where everything is and everybody feels more comfortable there. So then, even if it means camping in your own backyard, you'll probably be more comfortable there than having to go somewhere else. So look for options. Give yourselves as many options as you can and greater flexibility. All right. Keep in mind that in many shelters, pets may not be admitted. So if you do have pets, you want to plan ahead. Now, we happen to have the fantastic Peninsula Humane Society here in San Mateo County, and they do terrific work with emergency shelters for pets. But you want to have your pet ready to go. So let's say you do have to take them to a pet shelter. You want to make sure they have their food and maybe their bed or blanket or something that they will recognize as, and again, to help them stay calm. So a go bag for your pet is certainly important as well. All right. As far as bringing things to the shelter, I always encourage as little as possible. You want to take, your go bag and put it underneath your cot and have everything there. You can only bring food to a shelter if it is commercially packaged. It's not like, Aunt Mabel's apple pie and I want to share it with everybody. Not allowed, because we don't know where things are coming from and things can easily get contaminated. So let's keep it in commercial packaging, no glass containers. Again, safety first, and alcoholic beverages, not allowed in the shelter, okay? A lot of people tell me that one of the best things they put in their go bag, by the way, earplugs. Because if you do go someplace that you're not accustomed to, sounds are different. If you're in a shelter, there's a lot of different people. So sometimes earplugs might be helpful to help you sleep, certainly. But bring things that you are comfortable with and that'll help you pass the time. Again, help the kids, it'll help you, lower the anxiety, everybody will feel better. All right. Different sources of information. We talked about communications earlier, but different sources of information, a variety of sources of information that are reliable. You don't want to be hearing something from somebody whose neighbor told them, 10 minutes ago happened somewhere else. You want sources of information, and then you are the best person to decide what to do with that information and how to resolve the issues with you and your family's needs, right, with that information. So channel 27, if the TV is still working, SMC alert, we're talking about that again. If you live in Foster City or San Mateo, or you're in that area at the time of the emergency, you can tune your AM radio to these frequencies, and if there's information to be shared, it will be shared that way as well. And of course, local radio and television stations will be constantly getting updates from the different areas as far as what's happening and what you need to know. So make sure you're using a variety of reliable sources. So let's talk a little bit about SMC Alert and how to work with it. SMC Alert is something that you register for. You go to www.smcalert.info, and that gets you to this page. And over here, there's a Register Now button, and you can go ahead and register. The nice thing about SMC Alert is you can customize it. You can localize it. So, my husband used to work in San Bruno, and then I work in San Mateo, and my mom lives in Pacifica. So I want to make sure I'm getting alerts from those cities in San Mateo County so I can actually check those off. All right. Again, if your kids are in school in one city and you're somewhere else, you want to get information from all those areas. It also asks you what type of alerts you want to get. And SMC Alert will tell you about road closures, and it'll tell you about wildlife sightings, and it'll tell you about storms and that sort of thing. So what does an SMC Alert look like? It comes to your phone, or it comes to any mobile device. It can come via email as well. And this is an example. So it isn't going to be like this perfectly neat, easy to read necessarily message, but it's going to have very crucial information, because remember, folks like me are trying to get you information as quickly as possible. So very brief sometimes, a little bit more wordy on this side, but it has links and information. So again, it's going to maybe has some typos, but at least they try to get it out to you as quickly as possible so that you, again, can make the best decision for you and your family. All right. Now let's look at special provisions, as they call it. All right, we know that we may have to evacuate quickly, and an emergency may not be a regional big thing. It can just be your home. If your home is on fire, that's a disaster to you. So you want to make sure that you have the capability of recovering as well as possible, because the recovery process is long and can be very daunting and overwhelming. So again, we want to lower the anxiety as much as possible. So you've heard the horrible stories out of the wildfires and people who've lost everything, and now they have to go through the process of applying for aid or going to their insurance company and filing a claim. But if you don't know who your insurance person is, or if you don't know, what account numbers you have, or maybe you don't even have your driver's license and you can't prove who you are, imagine how much more difficult that recovery process is going to be. So again, we want to try and lower the anxiety. How do we do that? All right. Why not take pictures of all of your important documents, insurance, birth records, death records, lease agreements, rental agreements, mortgage agreements, all of those things. Take pictures safely, put them onto a thumb drive, and then save that thumb drive at another location. So it could be, you know, a parent's home, you put it in the drawer, you know exactly where it is. Again, where things might be accessible, because if your house burns down and all your paperwork is gone, you've got copies. Now you can find out your records, you can prove who you are, you have account numbers, you have names and phone numbers, your credit cards, all that stuff, copies of everything, and you have lowered the anxiety and started the process of recovery much more smoothly. Okay, so that's the important part there. All right, this is a nice small pack. It's certainly the beginnings of a go bag, but it doesn't have any of the personal items, okay? But you want to think about something that's something carryable, something that you can take with you. So most people, when they do a go bag, they'll probably do a backpack, but it's something you want to be able to carry yourself, and it should be one for each member of the family. And like I said, if you have pets, you want to include them as well. All right. Okay. Sandra, how long do I have to be ready for? How much do I have to pack? How much do I need to carry? Remember, you may have to evacuate on foot. So again, can you carry it? You don't want to have rolling, you know, buckets of stuff. You want to be able to carry it on your back. And that's why that thumb drive is so cool, because again, you don't have to put everything on it, your pictures, everything, all those things that are important to you. Put copies on a thumb drive, store it in a safe place that is accessible. It doesn't have to be nearby. If you know that it's at your parents' house and it may take you a day or 3 days or whatever to get there, or for them to get it to you, that's fine. But it's away from your home. So if your home burns down, I hope not, but if it does, you have copies and you're able to start the recovery process, okay? So let's talk about being self-sufficient. Often the term was 72 hours, 3 days. It has now been extended to a week. We think that a week of self-sufficiency is an important goal for all of us to strive for. And we want to be able to store, you know, things in our home. Water being really, really important. Now, what do they recommend in terms of water? They're always talking about a gallon of water per person per day. Here's my favorite gallon of water again. Okay, here's your gallon of water for you for today. How much water did you use today? Did you make coffee this morning? Did you wash your hands several times today? Did you take a shower? Did you cook? Okay, is this enough water for you for today? So it's up to you how much water to store. A gallon of water per person per day is the recommended minimum. It's up to you to decide how much for you and your family to store, and how you're going to store it and where you're going to store it. Again, it's going to depend on location, size, options. Do the best you can. Where do you keep all this stuff? Well, think about the places that you spend the most time. All right. So for many of us in the past, it was, you know, an office or a place of work, school for the kids, your car. So I have some things in my car, I have some things at home, and I have some things at work. So no matter where I am when something happens, I have a few things with me to make me comfortable, keep me safe, and give me options, okay? So the one, we talked about the gallon of water, oops. All right. Again, electricity might be out, so give yourself options. A non-electric can opener, food, special diets, right? Anything that you need to have it with you, because you can't expect emergency personnel to have a great variety of things right after an earthquake happens. And certainly medications, whatever medications you take, especially if you take things on a daily or semi-regular basis, you want to have those in your go bag. All right. And you want to rotate things, you know, put in your week's worth of medications in there, use your week, and then trade. Okay. Keep things fresh. Same with your water supply, right? You buy a case of water the next time you go to the grocery store. Okay. Replace the one that you had in the emergency kit and so on. Okay, keep it rotating. Cash and change, we talked about that. I get the question a lot, how much cash should I store? Again, that's up to you. Only you know what works best for you. You don't want to be running around with a wad of cash. And again, it has to be accessible. So you want to keep, you want to keep your stash of cash maybe somewhere else, in another home or another friend's house or whatever, accessible places that you can get to. All right. Sturdy shoes, sure. If you're going to be going through a damaged home or whatever, you want to start thinking about keeping yourself safe. You see a lot of people going back into the burned areas to see if they can salvage anything in their homes. It's very, very important that they have PPE. And everybody talks about PPE as the masks that we're all wearing now, or gloves, that sort of thing, but PPE stands for personal protective equipment. So that can be anything. If you are working in the construction industry, you are familiar with PPE as a hard hat and maybe a respirator and work gloves and boots. That's PPE as well. So personal protective equipment for the job at hand. And in this case, if you're checking around your house for damage, sure, you want to make sure it's a flashlight, make sure that you have heavy gloves, protect your hands, protect your feet, and then things that will help you, camping gear, paper, pens. Your phone isn't going to be working. You're not going to be able to use the device all the time. Just good old-fashioned pens and paper, always a good thing to have in your emergency kit. My colleague Casey is always after everybody for trash bags. Trash bags. You need more trash bags than you think you do. Trash bags are great for sanitation. They're great for warmth. They're a great raincoat if you need it. They give you, again, more flexibility, more options in an emergency. They can carry things. Trust me, you want trash bags to be part of your emergency kit. All right. What's missing here now in this day and age? Again, this PowerPoint presentation was made several months ago. So how about some hand sanitizer, right? You got to have hand sanitizer. So masks, keep extra masks. You should have extra masks in your car and extra masks in your emergency kit, hand sanitizer, all that important things that we now have to add to our emergency and comfort list, if you will. All right. We want to be able to cook, and we need tools and cooking items. So again, if you have camping equipment, you're ahead of the game right there. All right. But trust me, a lot of these tools will come in handy for different things, again, depending on the situation, living conditions, whatever, for the days after the emergency. A city map, and I'm not talking about something on your phone. Actual paper maps, very helpful and very reliable, and certainly something that can be used even when the power is out and your phone isn't charged. So a few old school items never hurt. All right, and I talked a bit about where to keep these basic necessities. Have some options, have them, you don't have to have just one massive kit, in a shed in the backyard. You can have a few things scattered around, and yes, one major kit at home or at work, wherever it is that you can store the most things. But wherever you tend to hang out, places that you tend to be the most, that's where you want to have some items. All right. So let's talk a bit about when things happen someplace else. This, I believe, is a home in Alabama. This here is downtown Orlando after a hurricane. When these things happen and the wildfires that we're experiencing right now, it breaks our heart. And the wonderful thing about us and our humanity is that we want to immediately help people. And how can we do that? So the questions come fast and furious. How can we help? What do we send? And we have this, people are always doing collections, and they're rounding up people, and they're trying to, send truckloads of something to wherever the damage is. And this is what we hope for. We hope that somebody's going to open that box or open that bag, and it's going to be exactly what they need. But in a disaster, when a lot's going on, this is what usually ends up with our donations, okay? If we send stuff, it's going to end up in a pile because there's a few things that are not available in a disaster. Personnel, they're all busy with the disaster, solving whatever the problem is, right? Okay. Space, all the space that's available, we're using to shelter people, shelter the mutual aid. For example, with the wildfires, we have firefighters coming in from other states and even other countries. We need to house them somewhere. And again, how is someone going to know what's in this plastic bag or this plastic bag, right? So now this just stays there taking up space and eventually becomes a health hazard, I can't say that. And then that means that the local jurisdiction has to hire a special team, all dressed in Tyvek suits and proper equipment, to remove the health hazard. So now not only have we taken up space and time, we have put an additional cost to this community that's already gotten hit. So what do we do to help people efficiently and effectively who are suffering and need some assistance? If you are as kind-hearted as I know that you are, let's look at things a little differently. First of all, every disaster is different. So the best person to know what you need is you. So who am I to send you a jacket if that's not what you need? So let's give them options and flexibility, right? And let's help them with their recovery by putting money or gift cards into that community where it's really needed and where it can do the most good. So please pick a organization, a charity that is working in the disaster area, one that you trust and you know. All right, there's going to be a lot of GoFundMe's, and there's going to be a lot of people raising money. Pick an organization that you know that is working in the area that you are concerned with. All right, gift cards also work very well, so that's another option as well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about water, and which we already mentioned. Again, I think water is going to be one of the big things that people tend to overlook when it comes to storing. But when you listen to emergencies, hurricanes, whatever the case may be, there's always going to be an issue with the water, at least right away, until they have determined that the water sources are safe. So water is really, really a crucial thing to have on hand in an emergency. So someone asked me in another class if water gets stale, or if you have to change it up. And water does get a little stale, maybe after a year. So again, rotate your water, once a year if you want to, at daylight savings or on your birthday, or pick an anniversary or something that you know, and you can change your water. All right. And again, a gallon per person per day is the minimum. You decide what works best for you. All right. People have asked me a lot about water storage in different ways. Obviously, you can go and buy a case of water and store it, but these, are, bricks of water. They carry about between 3.5 and 5 gallons, and you can store them under your bed. You can stack them in a corner. You can stack them in the closet. So that gives you, again, some more options and flexibility. And depending on your budget, size of your family, the size of your property, you may even want to consider barrels like this, okay? All right, what else can we do? You're taking this class, which is a huge, big part of getting your preparedness rolling. CPR, first aid. These are trainings that are available to you. Now, of course, you're gonna have to do them in a virtual way, but there are ways to do that. In the old days, it used to be ABC, but now it's circulation airway bleeding, circulation airway bleeding, CAB. You've heard about hands-only CPR. There are a lot of different options. The training is very simple. It's very straightforward. Anyone can learn it. So I highly, highly recommend first aid and CPR training. Get familiar with the kits and things that are available. Make sure you customize them. Practice your escape plans. Practice where you're going to meet. Talk to your family about that, out-of-state contact. but make sure that your family knows where things are and that you talk about it. Not talking about it doesn't make them not happen, and you don't have to scare people. You can, it empowers people to have knowledge about what to do. All right. Okay. I told you that this month, September, is National Preparedness Month. So one of the things that we do during September is we take a survey of folks like you so that we, in the professional responders area and in the planning section, are able to plan appropriately. We want to know what worries you, what concerns you have, how much you prepare, where you need help, so that we can continue to offer either classes like this or trainings that the community feels that it needs. So if you'd please write this down and take a chance, when you have a free moment, either later this evening or tomorrow morning, it would really be very helpful to us if you took this survey here. All right. Other things you can do. We're coming up on the holidays. I know it's hard to believe and hard to think about right now. Or maybe you have someone who's, getting ready to go to college or will be going to college or moving into a new home. Why not make preparedness your gift? I know that, fire extinguisher may not be as cool as a vase or a place setting, but it shows people that you care about them and that you want them to be safe as possible. So as a gift, why not? All right. So what now? You've taken this class, you've sat through here for almost, an hour and a half now, and what can you do? Believe it or not, there are things you can do right now that don't even involve, leaving the house. But tips and ways that you can make yourself, again, have more flexibility, have more options, and keep your family safer. Half a tank of gas. My mom always used to say, half a tank belongs to you and half a tank belongs to the car. In the fire department, half a tank is empty. At half a tank, we need to refill our vehicles. So consider that for yourself as well. Why? If you had to evacuate now, you have to leave now. It's not time to go get gas and then leave town. You can't roll into the gas station and expect to roll back out right away. Everyone's going to be doing the same thing. So give yourself more options. If you have a half a tank of gas, you can get 100 miles out of town if you needed to with your family, escape whatever the situation is, and then you can refill later, okay? Next time you're at the grocery store, buy an extra case of water. What I'm trying to say here is that preparedness is not something that you need to devote an entire weekend to and thousands of dollars to. No, it's your routine. You keep a half a tank of gas in the car, you buy an extra case of water. The next time you go to the store, you buy that extra, pack of Band-Aids or bandages to refill your first aid kit with, that sort of thing. Have an extra charger. We all have electronic devices. Chargers, we all need. So extra chargers are not going to hurt anybody and certainly will come in handy. Make sure you have chargers in your go bag. You will need them. A change of clothes. I have flats, tennis shoes in my car, a change of clothes in my car. Because if I'm at work and I'm wearing, high heels because I'm doing a presentation like this, then I don't want to be wearing that in an emergency. So I know that I have a pair of tennis shoes that I can change into. Comfort, you want to be comfortable. That out-of-state contact. You need to call your aunt or uncle out of state or your brother, just give them a call and say, hey, by the way, do you mind being my out-of-state contact? This is what it involves. If they're good with it, make sure everybody in your family, my family is a large Italian family and most of us live in the Bay Area. So we know that we will definitely need to have somebody out of the area to get the report of how everyone is. So we have that pretty well established. If your kids are in school, I know now everybody's doing things virtually, but when they're back to school at some point, make sure you know what your school's emergency plan is. Again, it will lower the anxiety if you know what the plan is, if they have a particular place they evacuate to or where they plan to be, because you may not be able to get to the school right away after an emergency. And please consider registering with SMC Alert or the alert messaging systems for the county in which you tend to spend time. So these are all things that you can do very easily and be so much more prepared than you were a couple of hours ago. Take CERT. Consider looking into the CERT program where you live. Most Fire departments tend to organize the CERT program. In some cities, the police department does. But CERT does exist very, very actively throughout San Mateo County. Whichever city you live in, you should be able to find a CERT program near you. CPR and basic first aid, terrific. And please reach out to me. The website is there and my best email there for you to use. We would be happy to hear from you if we didn't cover anything that you need more information about. So now what I want to do, after I have been yapping forever, is get some information from you in terms of questions. Are there any questions that you have that I didn't cover or that I didn't make clear? Janelle is checking those for me and she'll let me know.
Yep, so we've had, looks like we did a great job. We covered a lot of ground tonight. So just a couple of questions here. The first is, will the presentation be available in other languages?
Oh, thank you for asking. So just before the pandemic hit, I had translated everything into Spanish called Preparedness, and it was supposed to debut back in March. So obviously we had to put that plan on hold. So now I'm converting it to virtual and hope to be offering it in Spanish. I don't have any other languages at this point, but look, the same way you registered for tonight's class on our Eventbrite site, we will post any other classes, whether they be CPR, first aid, Preparedness, or more get ready classes. So if you go to the smcfire.eventbrite.com, that's where we list all of our classes. And the Preparedness, I hope to eventually be able to offer quite soon.
Great, thank you. And if anyone else has questions, please go ahead, enter them into the Q&A box. One other question, do you recommend gas shutoff valves being installed?
A lot of people are using those, again, professionally installed. They can be a terrific resource. So please look into that for your home. Again, only you know what works best for you. I think they can even be set to automatically turn off at a certain magnitude of earthquake. And again, don't forget, you cannot turn on your gas once it's shut off. But certainly worth looking into with a professional.
Okay, no other questions so far. Anyone else wants to type in? Oh, here we go. Can we get the slideshow printed?
Well, if you were in a classroom with me, you would have gotten that. I may be able to do that. Give me some time to figure that out.
Yeah, we might be able to email you a PDF of the slideshow. So when you registered, you provided us your email. You can send us an email at cert@smcfire.org or prepare@smcfire.org. Either of those will get to us and we'll be able to send a PDF to you. So I'll put those in the chat box. Also, someone's asking, where is this recording available? Well, we've been streaming live on YouTube, so you could actually go to YouTube on the SMC Fire site, and you'll be able to find this very recording. Next question, do you have any apartment living specific recommendations?
Okay, so apartment living is slightly different. You have to, like I said, everybody knows their own home and their own area the best. For example, when I showed you earlier the gas main and we talked about utilities and that sort of thing. In an apartment or condo setting, you're going to have a whole row of gas mains. And so how do you know which one is yours? One thing you can do, it is free and it's something you can arrange through PG&E, whether you're in a home, condo, or apartment, is you can ask for them to come over and do sort of a check on your energy usage and find maybe areas where your energy usage might be wasteful and you might be able to make an adjustment there and improve and be more efficient. But also when they come out, you can ask them, can you please show me where my gas main is? And if you live in an apartment complex where there's a whole bunch of them, you want to make sure you know which one is yours. So that is one thing you can do that is specific to apartments. Escape planning. My mother, for example, lives on the second floor and her window goes to the outside of the building. So she has a ladder under her bed. Escape fire ladder if she needs it. Now she's older, so she's not actually going to plan on doing the ladder, but she did for many years have that ladder under her bed. One of those that roll up and you can put it on your window. The thing about, everybody lives in a different place and the situation is different. So make sure you have escape plans, make sure you've walked that escape plan with your family, with your kids, and that there are options, as many options as you can. If your apartment complex is up for it, they may even organize a fire drill, in which case they pretend the fire alarm goes on when everybody evacuates, safely to a meeting place. And again, you want to be able to have a meeting place so that you are assured that everyone got out safely, or if someone didn't, that you're sending the first responders in a focused way exactly where people may be left behind.
Okay, I think that's all the open questions that we have. So I'll give everyone one last call for open questions. I have an attendee here raising their hand. So if you want to go ahead and type into the dialog box what your question might be, we like to have those typed there so everyone can hear it. I'll give you a second. Maybe we already addressed your question as we were talking.
And we will be doing another Get Ready, and as I said, the Spanish Preparedness class. So if this was helpful to you at all, and I, again, very much appreciate your time in helping us to build this culture of preparedness in our community. Spread the word, let folks know to look for it, and to please register for the next time that we have this class.
Okay, there's a question. Do you have a recommendation for a ready-made go bag to purchase?
Well, there are a lot of them. For the most part, they're quite good. This is National Preparedness Month, so you're going to find a lot of them on sale in hardware stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, that sort of thing, online, Costco. Everybody's going to carry them. Brand name, no, there are no recommendations. They have a lot of them. Again, it'll be like a 2-person 3-day backpack, right, with everything you need for 2 people for 3 days. Great. Like I said, they're terrific. Please don't just buy it and throw it into the trunk of the car or into the closet and say, hey, I'm ready. Open everything up, unpack everything that's in there, take a look, and then customize it. Make it yours. What do you want? A pair of scissors or prescription glasses, your medication, food, something that's going to sustain you for a couple of days. So keep that in mind. Entertainment. You want to be entertained, even when the power's out and things are falling apart. It's nice to be able to lose yourself in a book or a game of cards or something like that. So, lower the anxiety. That's what we're all about.
That's right. And we're not thinking it's a good idea to play Bedazzled or Bejeweled or Candy Crush in the middle of the earthquake response or in your shelter. So you definitely want something that's not going to be sucking up your cell phone battery.
Right. And it's quiet and something you can do on your own. Yeah.
That's right. So again, this presentation is going to be on YouTube. It's there right now. So if you just Google YouTube and you type in San Mateo Consolidated Fire, you'll find our page with all of our presentations. And so you can access that whenever you'd like, and fast forward, find the section of our presentation you're interested in. It's open and available to everyone. We have someone else here who has a Lively device with a button to call directly to 911. Will they know her location?
Well, you have that device, therefore you're registered with them. And when you call them, all that information should go on. Yes, that's the short answer. But always, always, always make it a habit of, when you talk to any dispatch, that you're telling them the type of emergency so they know who to start sending, and city, location. Okay, don't just say, hey, I'm on Main Street, because you could be on Main Street in any one of a dozen cities, right? So I'm in Foster City on East Hillsdale, or wherever you may be. Please give that information right off the bat so they can start rolling help to you faster.
Okay, well, I think that about wraps up all the questions. So I'm going to say thank you to everyone who's participated tonight. I've provided our email in the chat box, so if you do have any needs to reach us, request copies of the presentation, ask us other questions maybe you didn't think to ask us tonight, Sandra will be able to get back to you. And we appreciate your participation. Thank you so much, and everyone stay safe.
Have a good night all. Thank you very much.